So. Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu Vitamin X. Mein Name ist Salim Samatou und was ihr gleich hier hören werdet, ist ein Gespräch mit einem ehemaligen CIA-Spionen, Andrew Bustamante. Das Problem ist, dieses ganze Gespräch ist auf Englisch. Wenn du das jetzt gerade auf Spotify hörst, kannst du auf YouTube wechseln und das Video dir dazu angucken, denn dort haben wir sowohl englische als auch deutsche Untertitel. Falls du das gerade auf YouTube guckst, bist du schon genau richtig. Das folgende Gespräch ist komplett auf Englisch. Ich habe versucht, und er auch, so langsam wie möglich zu sprechen, damit ihr genug Zeit habt, die Untertitel zu lesen. Und für die, die kein Englisch können, dafür sind sie da. Und jetzt viel Spaß mit dem ersten englischen Podcast mit Andrew Bustamante. Hello, and Mr. Bustamante, Andrew Bustamante. Welcome to the German podcast, Vitamin X. How are you doing?
I'm good, Salem. It's good to be here, man.
What a great time to be alive, man. I listened to you somewhere on the web, and then I write you on Instagram, and now we're talking face to face. It's unbelievable, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's funny, man. I've been getting so many Instagram messages. There was just something about yours. You were positive, you were funny, and I'm not funny. So funny is very attractive to me.
Oh, amazing. I'm gonna keep that in mind. I was so excited when you answered to me because I think I was actually one of the first ones who listened to the podcast like immediately. Like Lex's podcast popped up, CIA spy, and I was like, I need to listen to this. And then when you came to the part where you said all the USA does is giving debt to Ukraine, and then I was like, I need to meet with him right now. And then I just gave it a shot. I never thought that you could answer, that you would answer. And now I'm looking at you face to face, and now you kind of look like all of my uncles. It's unbelievable.
Well, we need to get together. Just invite me to the next family reunion.
Do you go somewhere sometimes to Europe or Germany? I think you've been in Europe. Where have you been?
Yeah, so I've traveled a bit through Europe. Europe is actually one of the continents that I am least familiar with. But I was in Austria recently. I've been through Germany a few times. I spent a winter in Portugal. Europe is beautiful and it's comfortable. And I think that's why I stay away. I tend to look for places that are a little bit more uncomfortable and a little less beautiful.
Oh, perfect. So just for all the listeners who may not be familiar, can you just tell a little bit about your life and how you got to the CIA and all that stuff, just to make it a little wrap up so everybody is familiar?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Andrew Bustamante. I'm an ex-covert CIA intelligence officer, and I run a company now out of the United States called Everyday Spy, where I teach everyday people the same elite skills that I learned when I was with CIA. And it's been a joy and a pleasure because it's been an awesome journey. People really want to learn. People are excited to see through the eyes of a spy, and I think that's what brings me here today, Salem, to just pass that information, pass that experience, and share that knowledge.
Unbelievable. So what does covert spy means? Are there different kinds of spies? Because I think here in Germany, we only know James Bond and all that stuff. But what kind of different spies are there?
Yeah, there are a number of different kinds of spies. And, it's funny because in Germany, you guys have your own intelligence service. It's called the BND. And in the international world, the German intelligence service is actually really very well respected. It's a very capable, very well-funded, very technical intelligence service, even though I understand that most Germans don't like their own intelligence service. Most Germans don't like the BND.
Okay.
No BND movies out there, right? But to answer your question, Salem, you have covert spies, which is another way of saying undercover spies. These are people who live and work by day looking like they're one thing, but they're really something else. Maybe they look like they're a salesperson, or they look like they're a dentist, or they look like they're a businessman, but they're really a government planted spy collecting secrets from other foreign governments. That's a covert spy. But then you have technical spies. These are people who You may never see their face ever because they do all of their espionage, all of their spying through the computer or through social media or through group chats or forums. Sometimes they're called hackers. You also have overt spies. Overt spies are oftentimes when you find people who are in military intelligence. They're not undercover. They're military officers in intelligence roles. So that's an overt spy. Everybody knows that they are a military intelligence person there to collect secrets about the military, but they're not living and working undercover. So they're not covert. They're what we call overt. And then there's all sorts of other spies that go from there. There's spies that handle spy rings. There's spies that hunt for other spies. There's spies that fly drones and satellites. There's spies that are called paramilitary, and they run assassinations and kill operations. So there's many kinds of spies out there. But yeah, you're right. Most people are really only familiar with James Bond, who is, if anything, he's an overt spy because he goes around saying he's James Bond, MI6 operative.
So which one of these have you been?
I've been a covert. Yeah, covert means undercover. So that's the category that I fell under for my entire career. Towards the end of my career, I moved into the paramilitary space, which are all of your capture, kill, counterterrorism kind of operations. But I moved into that space in a very specific area that's still classified. So I wasn't out there. I wasn't out there killing anybody, but I was out there helping other people to find the right people to neutralize.
Okay, neutralize. That's the word for killing. Nice. Neutralize. So you were like looking for the targets. I think you call them targets, right? Like Osama bin Laden or the nephew of Osama bin Laden. Those are targets. You want to get to them. And then you walk around
Correct.
pretending to be a dentist in Afghanistan. And then some patient walks around, hey, who are you? I'm the nephew of Osama bin Laden. And you're like, you can get me to Osama bin Laden. And then you tell the paramilitary that's where he is.
Yeah, what's funny is they should make a movie out of the plot you just laid out because that's an excellent plot. Who doesn't want to watch a movie about a terrorist who's assassinated through the dentist? That sounds like an awesome movie plot.
So where have you where were your destinations? Where have you been in the Middle East or where?
So I've been all over the world. My specialty was Asia. So I'm ambiguously brown, much like you, right? Handsome brown.
Okay.
Handsome brown in Europe and handsome brown in most Western countries gets attention. But when you're brown and you're anywhere in Asia, like nobody notices that you even exist.
Wow.
Because everybody is, Asia is a very, very racist part of the world. Not like the United States where we say everybody's racist. Japan, for example, Japan actually does not let anybody live, and nobody can become a Japanese resident unless they are Japanese. Like that's as racist as it gets. You cannot even live in the country if you are not Japanese. Even if you marry a Japanese, it's still very difficult to get residency inside of Japan. So, and that's carried on. That's the same way in China and in Korea and in Vietnam and Thailand and Cambodia, right? They are very comfortable with Asian people, with people of their own that look Asian. But if you look brown, you're basically a second-class citizen or less. So it was very easy for me to blend in throughout Asia and then, of course, through the Middle East and Latin America where brown is common.
So I don't know if this gets to classified stuff, but I'm thinking like I can literally put myself in your shoes because we almost have the same skin color, same eye color. I could even make my hair look like yours. I could grow my beard. We're almost like stunt double, right? Almost. So that's why I'm
let's do it.
That's why I'm so fascinated. Because I think like Japan and Korea are very homogenous countries, right? Like 96%, they are not immigrant friendly. And if you walk around there, how can you be undercover if everybody notices you? You know what I mean?
So yeah, this is what's interesting. The way that the human brain works, the human brain is actually wired to identify threats and non-threats. So when people talk about racism, especially in the United States and in Europe, when people talk about racism, what they're saying is that when a human being sees another skin color, or when a human being sees a male or a female of a certain build, it triggers a part of their cognitive brain that makes them think this person is a threat, right? So in the United States, when Caucasian people are intimidated or afraid of African American people, what's actually happening on a cognitive level is that the Caucasian person sees the African American and thinks at a subconscious level, this person is a threat to my safety. The same thing happens in African American neighborhoods. When an African American neighborhood when a child grown or raised in an African American neighborhood sees a Caucasian man for the first time, they will often think this person is a threat to my safety, right? And that's when you talk about deep-seated or institutional racism, that's what's really happening on a cognitive level. So let's take that to Asia. Now, in Asia, when they see someone who is not Asian, they do not think that person is a threat. They think that person is not a threat. So as long as you're not seen as a threat, nobody remembers you. Nobody even notices you. It's the reason you don't notice children when they run around in the grocery store, because they're not threatening to you. It's the reason you don't really care about old ladies, because they're not threatening to you. You don't ever remember an old lady 5 minutes after you see her, but you might remember the really well-built, Indian guy that walked a little too close to you when you were trying to, go to the ATM, because that person triggered a threat response.
That's how you make racism to your advantage. That's unbelievable. Exactly. But I look at you with that hair. If you walk around in Japan, I will always remember you. Did you walk around like this, or did you have some disguise or something?
Yeah, no, I did not look like this. I did not look like this when I was operational, for lots of reasons, because hair is memorable, beards are memorable. You see my gigantic forehead. Like these are memorable features. Look at my nose. It sticks out like 2 miles, dude. I feel like Pinocchio. But these are very,
you are Pinocchio because you lie all the time for living, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But these features, you want to mute them. Whenever you go, you mentioned disguise, right? Whenever we go into using disguise, there's different levels of disguise, different types of disguise. But generally what you do is you mute or you take away all of the parts of your body, all of the features that are easy to remember. And then you make it so that they're more normal, or so they blend in. So instead of long hair, you have short hair. Instead of having a beard that's well manicured, you might grow like a beard that's not manicured, or you might shave it all off. But because again, it's all about threat and non-threat. Threat and non-threat. People see short hair as non-threatening. Unless it's so short it's like the military, then they see it as threatening. Right? When you see a beard that grows, but it's not very well manicured, you don't see that person as a threat. Unless it's a scraggly, crazy beard, then that person's a threat. Wow. But when you see like a perfectly trimmed beard, have you met many Arabs? Like Saudis, Emiratis, Qataris, they have these laser etched beards. When you see that, you notice. You see it as a threat. That person has more money, they have more power, whatever it might be. You see something that threatens you and you remember it. So when you go undercover and you start donning what we call level 1 or level 2 disguise, those first 2 levels of disguise, all you do is just take away things that make you memorable.
So level 1 and level 2 is like, I'm like just imagining like a life where you are in a foreign country pretending to be something else. You have an excuse. Even you are obligated to lie to everybody. You have like this fake life by day, like this Clark Kent movie stuff, and at night in a bar, someone tells you on your phone, Target is in this club. And then you walk in there, bump into them, oh hey, nice shirt, and then you try to talk to them, seem to be as non-threatening as possible, and then get them to betray their own country. That was your job.
And that's almost exactly how it works too, Salim. It doesn't happen in one night, but you just laid it out. That's exactly how it works. They don't talk in your ear inside the club. They'll talk in your ear before you go into the club, but someone confirms the target's in sight, target's in place, and then you go in and you bump them, you appear non-threatening, you get them to talk about certain things, you build trust, you take advantage of all the trick to espionage, the big secret sauce to espionage is that you learn to think like a human being thinks so that you can lead them down a predictable path. It's all there is to it. Some people call it manipulation. We call it cognitive programming. Every culture has its own cognitive programming. So it's just like coding a computer. You know what buttons to press at what times to get a predictable outcome. So you just press those buttons at the right time and you already know what to expect. And that's how you turn a patriot, someone who's trusted to keep secrets, you can convert them into a spy, someone who sells their secrets.
Oh my God, that is. So how do you apply for this? It seems like, how do you get to, because I want to join CIA today. This sounds unbelievable. I mean, I can be like, hey, give me the same stuff Andrew did. I cut my hair, I do everything. I just want to go around, lie to people and it's legal to lie then, right? Because you're like from your own government, right?
Yeah, it's tricky because espionage is illegal in every country, everywhere. Actually, you know what? I think technically espionage is legal in the city of Vienna. I think that's the only place where it's technically legal. Yeah, because of a loophole in their law system. So it might be the entire country of Austria, but it's for sure in Vienna. You can, like, there are very lax espionage laws, but everywhere else, except for Vienna, everywhere else, espionage is illegal.
And you have just been in Vienna, right? You have just been.
Yeah,
in
I was
Vienna.
I was in Salzburg, yeah, and I was in Austria.
Okay.
But yeah, but to your point, espionage is always sanctioned by your country, the country that employs you in its intelligence service. They say your lying is now legal, right? You can lie to the tax service, you can lie to the police, you can lie to all these people inside your country, and we'll protect you because it's allowed. But don't ever lie to us about your job, right? Like, your job is to lie in other countries and steal secrets from other countries and bring that back to us. As long as you're honest with us, we will let you lie to everybody else. But espionage on its own is not legal anywhere.
Wow. Okay. So if I want to become a spy, you said, like, if there is a ranking of Secret Service, right? It's all on the umbrella of Secret Service, right? So can the
It's all under the It's all under the umbrella of intelligence service, intelligence community.
Okay, intelligence community. So, like, you work for the CIA. So do you automatically share resources, like with the BND, British, Mossad, and all that? Are you all like a big family of liars, or is it like everybody has their own secrets?
No, I mean, dude, you're exactly right calling it a family, because it's very much like a family. So MI6 and CIA and Mossad, let's just talk about those three, and BND. So BND, Mossad, CIA, and MI6. We're all brothers. Maybe we're all sisters. Or if you don't want to identify as a boy or a girl, we're all, whatever, transgender peers, whatever you want to call us.
Okay.
But we're all equals. We're all equals, just like brothers and sisters in a family. So where we share secrets when it's beneficial to us. Just like sometimes you tell one brother something that you don't tell the other brother, or sometimes you'll tell your sister something you won't tell your brother because it benefits you. But at the same time, none of us trust each other because we all know that we're keeping secrets and we're all trying to, everybody's trying to suck up to mom and dad. Everybody's trying to, get the next best job. Everyone's trying to beat each other. In every family, every brother and sister wants to be the mommy and daddy's favorite, and every brother and sister wants to be like one step ahead of the other brother or sister. Whether they get married first, or whether they don't get fat, or whether they become famous, whatever it might be. So that's exactly how the intelligence services all work. When it benefits us, we cooperate. When it doesn't benefit us, we keep secrets. And we always still try to spy on each other because we want to make sure that we know if each other is being honest with us. So yeah, it gets really, it's a complex and untrusting world.
Is it even possible to apply for the CIA directly? Is it even possible to, as a foreigner, to work for the CIA?
So this is where we get into the talk. Remember how you started this whole conversation asking about different kinds of spies?
Yes.
So in the realm of all the different kinds of spies that are out there, yes, you can be a foreigner that works for CIA. So that's technically an asset. Every intelligence source that we have in the world is called an asset. They are foreigners who agree to work for CIA. But then you also have foreigners who might have multiple passports, right? You're an Indian citizen and a US citizen. You're a Canadian citizen and a US citizen, right? Two passports. Now you have an opportunity to go in under what's called a dual documented, and you'll be a different kind of spy, right? There's all sorts of different ways that foreigners can become spies. And then some foreigners, you don't even have to be a covert spy. You could be what's known as I just lost the word. There are foreigners who run their own spy rings, and then they'll sell their spy ring to a CIA officer, right? So maybe you're a Qatari and you have a ring of Somali informants, and then CIA hires the Qatari spy leader to run their ring of Somali leaders, and now it's a convoluted world. Take everything about business and stick it into like a movie, and you basically have all the different options of spies that are out there. Some spies produce spies that smuggle food in, spies that smuggle drugs out, spies that trade weapons, spies that shut down drug rings. It's an incredibly interesting world.
So what happens, like, if you drive around as a spy and there's some cop and you're doing something that is illegal, but for the CIA in your own country, and the police comes, do you just flick your CIA badge and they leave you alone, or how does this work?
So if you're undercover,
Yes.
you don't carry a CIA badge,
Ah.
right?
I would be such a shitty spy. I would be like, in the first day or something, I would get caught. Because I think, like, I live right now, because, like, I think if you could rank all those, I mean, like, if I try to make sense of all this, like, United States was pretty much an isolated country before World War II, right? World War II was the first time they engaged with the whole world. And all the other countries, Soviet Union, Europe, Japan, Asia, they all suffered from the war, destruction, their economies got smashed down, and the US kind of stayed untouched. So they could, like, profit from the war, from the huge, the military industrial complex was born. All those weapons were shipped out. So the economy boomed, kind of. And you lost, of course, some soldiers. That was the beginning of the whole new world order, where the US was on top. And then you had the beginning of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. I think that's where I think of spies, because the US thinks, oh my God, they have nukes. And the Soviets thinks, oh my God, they got nukes. We got to find out if the nukes are coming or not. I think that's the first time I would think, like, the US government would Google up their Russian-speaking citizens, and then there would be like, hey, could you go over there and find out if maybe you meet Khrushchev or something, or maybe you can work with nukes. Is there even a nuke operator? Like, how does this work? I mean, like, and then they send people over there, but the same thing the Soviet Union thinks, because we want to know what they're doing over there, and they think it, of course, themselves, all for national security. I think that's how the whole thing was born, right?
Yeah, so I mean, there's your answer, yes and no. You are correct and you are incorrect in some places.
Yes, please.
So let me start with where you're correct. So especially coming out of World War II, you had Nazi Germany, right? The Nazi Party trying to eradicate the Jewish race and then take over Europe. To counteract that immense takeover, you had the Soviet Union, you had Russia and the United States pair up as a team. And along with China, as funny as that is, China and Russia and the United States all work together to fight Nazi Germany, right?
And Japan.
And Japan.
Okay.
So then fast forward to the end of World War II, and now Japan, their economy is destroyed. They've had 2 nuclear bombs dropped on them. The Nazi Party has been destroyed. Germany is absolutely poverty stricken again after World War I and then World War II. So Europe is liberated but totally destroyed. So there's really only 2 choices for new world power: Russia or the United States. Now, when that scenario happens, you would think, oh, well, why can't they just work together? Like, they're the 2 strongest people. They should just work together. That's not the way it works, because of something called the security dilemma. The security dilemma is an actual proven theory that talks about how human beings protect themselves. So let's think about you and your neighbor. I'm sure wherever you live, you have a neighbor, right? Your house and your neighbor's house, let's just assume they're identical, right? They're on the same street, right next to each other. They have the same fence, the same car. They're both worth the same amount of money. If your neighbor goes and gets a guard dog, they buy a guard dog for their house. They're buying their guard dog to keep themselves safe. But what do you think when you see the guard dog? You're like, well, what does the neighbor know that I don't know? What if that guard dog comes and attacks me? I need a guard dog. So then you buy a guard dog. But do you buy the same guard dog? Hell no. You buy a bigger, meaner guard dog to make sure that the other guard dog doesn't come onto your property. And then when your neighbor sees your guard dog, they decide that they're going to buy an electric fence. Then you buy an electric fence. Then they buy a gun. You buy a gun. They put up shutters. You put up shutters. And this is called the security dilemma. In the Cold War, we called it the arms race. Oh, they got a missile. We've got to make a better missile. They made a jet. We've got to make a better jet. They made a better gun. We've got to make a better gun. It's natural human condition. It goes all the way back to our caveman days. In my cave, I was happy. But when you had your cave, all of a sudden I was like, well, what if you try to steal from my cave? So now I'm going to sharpen sticks and I'm going to build a bigger fire. And then over on the other side, you're sharpening sticks and you're building a bigger fire. As human beings, we are always fighting, always threatened at the idea of losing what resources we have, having those taken away from us. That's the security dilemma. So you are completely right when you talk about how after World War II, the security dilemma became a way of life. It's why the United States became the only global superpower in the world. It's why America is constantly fighting with China and Russia and Iran and anybody else who's trying to become the next, world order. Even if you go look in Europe itself, boil Europe down to the most peaceful 2 countries that you can think of, right? Whatever, Norway and Lithuania, I don't know. If you boil it down, even still, they're in a security dilemma. One of them wants more access to Russian oil to keep their people warm in the winter. The other one wants access to a different energy source, and there's just always competition. So that's the security dilemma at work. Now, where you're wrong is that it didn't start after World War II. The security dilemma, espionage, dates all the way back to ancient Egypt and even before that. Because the way that governors and pharaohs would become powerful is they would send spies into the royal courts of other governors and other, royals. And then those royal spies would share secrets back to their own court that would help it so that if there was an attack or an invasion, or if they wanted to poison someone's water, there would always be an advantage, what we call an informational advantage. It's just as powerful as having more guns or better jets or bigger, better nukes. If you have better information, then you'll always have the advantage over someone else. So espionage is as old as humankind in many ways.
Wow. Oh yeah, because I thought with beginning, because I remember even in the movie 300, like, do you know through the
Oh
Spartans?
yeah.
Oh, they're also like Xerxes, the Iranians had a spy in Sparta who kind of
Yep.
betrayed the legislators in order for Sparta not to go to war. I meant the born of CIA. That's what I thought. Were they born before Second World War?
No, CIA was born out of the Second
Okay.
World War. You are
Yeah.
correct.
Sorry,
Yep.
sorry. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
So their goal kind of was keep the influence and security for the American people, and that's they always need an information advantage, and then they send them out all over the world to gather intelligence.
Correct. You know, it's funny. I remember, I remember one of the inspirational speeches that I got when I first joined CIA. I there was this gigantic man. I mean, like a 6'6", heavy set man,
Shitty
white
spy,
guy.
right?
Yeah. I mean, he'd blend right in if he was in Norway, but he's gonna stick out like a sore thumb if he's in, Senegal. But but he gets up in front of our training class, and he gives this big inspiring speech. And I'm telling you, Salim, like, I was inspired. We were all inspired by this speech. And the whole message of the speech was how important CIA officers are to ensuring what he called American primacy. American primacy. Now, the word primacy means prime, number one, top, right? So here we are, a whole group of maybe 200 new recruits getting all gung ho about this speech where the purpose of CIA is American primacy. And in that moment, I remember thinking, somewhere there's 200 Russian recruits sitting around hearing about Russian primacy, and there's 200 Chinese recruits sitting around hearing about Chinese primacy, right? It's just and
But
that's
would
just a
they? But would they use the
powerful idea.
word? But would they use the word primacy? I think they would be like secondacy and stuff, right? Because I mean,
Well, I don't think in so this is what's so fascinating. In some countries they're using the word primacy, like Russia and the US and China. They're all like, we've got to be the top. If we're the top, we are always safe. But then in other countries like Israel, they're not using primacy, they're using survival, right? We have to be the best so that we can survive, right? Because Iran is pursuing nuclear weapons specifically to eradicate Israel. So for Israel, they don't need to be the best. They don't need to be the first. They need to be the most vicious to ensure their own survival.
they're also
But yes,
born
then
from
you've got,
Second World War, yes, because all
yeah,
the stuff
exactly. But then
was.
I'm sure you've got countries like the BND, right, or the DGSE in France. I'm sure they're saying we need to be the most professional and the most invisible, right? We don't want anybody to know we exist. We don't want anybody to even know that we're, I'm sure that BND officers love the fact that the German people don't really think much about them because that gives them tons of freedom to operate.
Wow. So if you could rank, I know it's a shitty word because of the primacy, but besides CIA, of course, I think I'm pretty sure you're of the opinion that the CIA is the top intelligence gathering agency. But after that, who are like the if you could start a new country today on a foreign island, you're on Antarctica right now, or Siberia is a new country now, and you are the president. Which of the all the intelligence agencies would you try to emulate in order to make sure that your new country is safe?
Yeah, that's a great question, Salem. I'm glad I like the way you asked it too. So we have this game in the United States that we play sometimes because the United States loves fast food. Fast food is horrible food. It's horrible food. And I know McDonald's is all over the world, and everybody has fast food of different types. But sometimes in the United States, Americans will actually say, "Oh, we like McDonald's French fries with, Wendy's hamburgers and whatever else, Taco Bell hot sauce." So we'll mix and match our fast food to make the perfect meal. So that's what I'm going to do the same thing with intelligence services, right?
Yes.
Yes,
I
exactly.
totally get
So
it.
if I was to make,
Amazing example. Like, do you learn this in CIA? I listen to your podcast. You always have like an answer that you get out so quickly, but you always have the perfect visuals. Is that like something that CIA taught you? Speak in pictures so you grab the imagination of your potential target? Or how do you learn this? Like, I
yeah, there's a,
asked you something and you're like perfectly that every child could imagining it. You're like a teacher and mentor, everything all at once. Is this all CIA skills?
yeah, that's all CIA skills, man. So because just to go, I mean, let me go backwards a little bit. CIA teaches us that when you're talking to someone, anyone, when you're talking to a millionaire or when you're talking to, a homeless person, you want to talk to everyone through as common a language as possible. And the most common language is visual language. That's the most common way of talking to somebody, right? If I hold up a pen, it doesn't matter what language you speak or what level of education you have, you know what this is. So the next best thing to holding up a pen is to say, it's like a pen, right? Everybody can relate to a pen. We actually have an exercise. We have an exercise that we learn when we go through spy school called Tell Me Like I'm 5. That's what the exercise is called, right? Talk to me like I'm 5, meaning of 5 years old. And that's how you can just boil down very complicated things into very simple things if you talk to someone like they're 5 years old.
It's
So,
amazing. Same comedy
and
rules.
I,
That's exactly the comedy rule. If you have a joke premise, you need to be as relatable and as easy to understand as possible in order to get the most audiences to laugh at that joke. That's why I'm so fascinated when you said I'm not funny. You have all the perfect skills to be hilarious because you always drew the pictures like with McDonald's and stuff. Now I'm imagining your answer that we are about to get is like, I want to get the fries from Mossad. I want to get the uniform from B&D. It's like amazing. Like CIA, I mean, this is like real skills. Like usually in public education, you always have teachers who failed at their jobs. And now this is like a cop out and they teach who they themselves are second class. And then they just teach shitty. But I see you're like the perfect personification that those teachers you had, they not just prepared you for CIA, they prepared you for life. Like wherever you get dropped in whatever country, you will find a way to survive and proliferate because you have all the human skills perfectly on fleek. It's unbelievable.
It's funny. I mean, I don't take any credit for that, man. It's all CIA is an idiot-proof organization. They have a way of taking anybody. They can take anybody, man. They can take anybody and they can turn them into a spy. The whole reason that they have an application process and an interview process, the only reason they have that is to make that process quickly, right? Because if you can create a spy in 3 months, then you should create as many spies in 3 months as you can. But if it takes you 2 years, it's not feasible to take 2 years to create something you could create in 2 months.
So if you're a CIA recruiter and you see all the people, like which character traits and which skills are you looking for in order to get this spy in a short as possible time to get him on the field? Like what kind of pre-existing conditions does he have to be?
So you're looking for people who are intelligent, obviously, right? If they haven't damaged their brains significantly. I mean, they don't mind if you've done marijuana. They don't really care if you've experimented with drugs. But if you're drooling on yourself, you're not going to make a good fit, right? It's just there's such a thing as too much. So they're looking for people who are intelligent. But I think the bigger things that they're looking for is they're looking for people who have a very pragmatic point of view. So let me give you, this is an example I like to explain to people, right? They're looking for things for people who are morally flexible or ethically flexible. Most of us think of ourselves as really rigid in terms of morals and ethics, right? Like if I were to look at you and I were to say, would you ever kill someone? Would you ever just go down the street and stab someone in the heart?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like if he is about to blow up the Twin Towers again, I would not hesitate, right?
Now, what if he was just a random guy going down the street?
Oh no.
What if he was a guy that cut you off in line,
No. That's I would not
right?
dare. No.
So most of us say, I would never hurt anyone. I would never kill anyone, right? But then you look that same person in the face and you say, what if that person was hurting your mom? What if they were beating your mother on the ground? Would you stab him then? There are still some people who would say, oh no, I would call the police, or oh no, I would step in front of my mom, or I would try to pull him off, right? And then you keep ramping it up. Like, well, what if he was wearing a bomb, walking to the center of the Twin Towers or whatever, the state capitol? Would you stab him then? And there's still people who would say, no, I can't stab him. He hasn't blown himself up yet. He hasn't done any damage yet, right? So there's lots of people out there who are very rigid in their morals, very rigid in their ethics. That's not going to make a good spy. But what you just said, where you were like, oh yeah, 100%, I'd stab a guy. You just basically said, Salem, you just said that you would stab a guy walking down the street wearing a bomb who hasn't committed a crime yet.
Yes. Oh, who has not? Okay, I see. I think it's
But
fascinating.
you just said you would stab an innocent person.
Oh,
That
yes.
is morally flexible, brother.
So I'm a good spy.
You would make a very good spy.
Because we had in
Because
Germany, after 9/11, we had in Germany this law: if on a plane there are terrorists and they're about to crash the plane into a building, should German military be allowed to shoot down that plane because they know that they are gonna drive into something? And the president of Germany, he always has to sign the law in the end, and then he refused to sign that because he said we cannot kill people because of hypotheticals. And then he declined that law, and to this day we are not allowed to shoot down planes who are like captured by terrorists. I think he was morally
right.
rigid.
Yeah, and there's a strength to moral rigidity. There are some places where you want that, because like in the court system, you want very rigid rules in the court system because you're deciding whether people are innocent or guilty. You want to make sure that that's very, very clear. But because you have the court system where things are so clear, you have to also have kind of the black market. You have to have the spy world to offset the square world, because we all know people can take advantage of the court system all the time. If you have the better attorney, if you have more money, if you just flee the country, you can get away with crime. So the only way that you basically stop that from happening is by having another arm of government, another area where they can work essentially outside of the court system. In the United States, we say we have three branches of government. We have an executive branch, we have a legislative branch, and we have a judicial branch, three different branches. And we always talk about how the three branches have to work together to keep each other in balance. But what we don't often talk about is the fact that the executive branch doesn't really have to listen to the legislative branch. Everything that you're seeing right now with all of the tension between the United States and China over Taiwan, all of that's happening because the legislative branch is not listening to the executive branch. So the executive branch with the president, they're saying one China policy, we're going to respect the one China policy, right? Taiwan belongs to China. Essentially, that's what President Biden is saying. But the legislative branch is going to Taiwan and offering their support because they're specifically saying, we don't really care what China thinks. We're going to do our own thing. So that there's an advantage there, just like there's an advantage to having the spy world and the court system, because you can basically do both things. You can have your cake and you can eat the cake too, right? You can talk out of both sides of your mouth and get away with it because you have these two systems. And that's what makes espionage so powerful. If you don't catch the bad guy through spying, maybe you can still catch them through the court system. If they escape the court system, you can still get them with the spy world. So it gives you an extra, it's like having a sword and a dagger at the same time.
Wow. Because I also think like the president, I think Trump proved it the best, that the president himself, like the executive, can also jump around in the two different ones. Because let's say somebody killed someone and then he gets the death penalty, then the president has the option to offset the law by pardoning them. So he can knock
Correct.
out that branch, and then he can do something called I think, executive order, where he can just throw the law in. So he basically is a dictator, right? Like for a short moment of time.
It's funny because President Trump is the one that I personally really liked that President Trump became the president. Because when Trump became the president, all of our problems became very obvious. Before, we had all the same problems before President Trump. We had problems with Bush. We had problems under Obama. We had problems with Reagan. We had problems with everybody. But nobody paid attention to it until President Trump. Then everybody paid attention. So you are exactly right. The executive can make an executive order, which puts something into law without needing the legislative branch. The executive can individually use what's known as a presidential finding to execute covert action on his own direction. That's how President Obama was able to kill Osama bin Laden. He didn't ask anybody's permission. He just used a presidential finding to run his own personal private covert action through CIA to kill Osama bin Laden, right?
CIA only listens to the president.
Correct. CIA falls under the executive branch. Yes, something else that people don't understand. And then, just like you said, the court system can say someone is guilty, and the president can come in and pardon them. So, like, the executive has the ability to bypass and shortcut any part of the system they choose, right? And then, even worse than that, you've got in the United States, you have the legislative branch, which is our senators and our congresspeople. And for decades, senators and congressmen have been trying to push more responsibility to the executive so that they don't have any responsibility, because they have to ask for people to vote them in every 2 years or every 6 years. So they're always campaigning instead of actually working. So they wanted the president to have all the responsibility. Well, then President Trump comes in and he's like, sure, I'll do everything. And he just does it all wrong. But that puts a huge light. Like it's like when you have a zit on your nose, and then you're on camera and the spotlight is shining off your nose. You're like, this big zit, I've always had an ugly nose, but this is President Trump right here. Now the whole world can see my ugly nose, right?
So I find it fat. I cannot actually, but maybe you know the answer because I'm dying for it since I'm a kid. Like, the president does all the stuff, he gets elected, because also the Congress people, I think, like, Nancy Pelosi is like there forever, right? She's there for all the presidents, and then like all those Congress people, they never change. Because I watched House of Cards, and I thought to myself, this can never be the reality. And then Obama and Clinton tweeted, this is a 99.9% accurate, and then I couldn't believe that those Congress people are there forever. And then you have some leverage over them because they somehow slept with your secretary, and then you can kind of put pressure on them to push on a law. And then Trump gets into office and makes all the House of Cards worst nightmares into a reality overnight. So I thought, man, this system is so fascinating, because I could not believe that the president just walks into the Oval Office. He does his oath. And is there like anybody who is talking to him? Are there like CIA people talking to him? How do they like get, if he has so much power, like the military? I know I've seen like only from movies, like they walk up to him. We found, for example, Trump, the general goes in there. We found General Soleimani from Iran in Iraq. He's under our jurisdiction because we are in Iraq. So technically we can shoot him down. So, and then Trump, like in the middle of the night, like little sleep in his eyes with his little potato chips on his shirt, says, yeah, go ahead and kill him. Is this how this is? Because the time zones are crazy. Because like in the middle of the night, they wake him up. Mr. President, we got him. Should we shoot him? Yeah, just do it. Go ahead. And then he continues to sleep. Is this really how it works?
So it's not quite, that would make another good film. It's not quite like that. It is close. It is close. I think the most depressing part of having a conversation with a comedian is how accurate you are. It tells me how laughable my entire career was. But my point So yes, the president has people talking to them all the time, whether whether your president is a male or a female, whether we're talking about the president of Taiwan or the president of the United States, there's always people talking to them. But there's a big but. The president chooses who talks to them. So it's, again, just like our family, right? When was the the gossip circles in your family? How there's always like there's two aunts and one cousin who always want to they always gossip.
Yes.
When they end up spending so much time talking about the same thing that they just become wrong. Over time, you're like, you guys are gossiping about things that aren't even real. The problem with the presidency is the president gets to appoint the positions of leadership in his entire office. So he can appoint who's going to be the Secretary of State. He appoints the director of CIA. He appoints all these different officials. And now it's basically just, a hen circle. It's a gossip circle. And it's very hard for new information to find its way in. Now, sometimes the people fight back, right? Sometimes people insist on saying, let me tell you the way it really is. President Trump was a good example of this. The CIA tried to tell Trump the truth about Russia. Trump didn't want to hear that. So instead, he just didn't listen to CIA at all. And he just hired his own private intelligence company to do stuff that CIA could have done. So it's the big wart on our nose. It's the big zit on our nose. It's like, this is a problem. You pick the person you want to have talk to you so that you don't hear the truth. But then at the same time, if you do hear the truth, you can just choose to push the truth aside and find a different truth, right? What's alternate facts? Is that what it is that became famous in 2016? Alternative facts or whatever it was? It's nuts, man.
It's not a zit on your nose. It's a nose on the zit. You know what I mean? It's not like a little... The whole system is like... It is unbelievable because I'm just imagining myself like everything that you hear, all those things from Northwood documents, just for short, all those conspiracies you hear about the CIA, everything makes sense now. Because it's just one guy deciding it. Because if one guy, let's say Fidel Castro slapped the first lady, or like President Bush saying, Saddam Hussein, he tried to kill my dad. They can use those personal stuff that has nothing to do with the public interest, and they have such huge apparatus, all filled with people who are way maybe smarter and more experienced than him, and he can just decide whatever he wants, and if you disagree, he can fire you, take in his cousin, and then he does it for you. Oh my God.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, man, because what you're talking about here, the word that you're talking about is called corruption. Right? Yes. And here's the truth of it. The truth of it is the United States wants to say that all these other countries are corrupt, right? There's corruption in China, there's corruption in Iran, there's corruption in Russia. The truth is that corruption can look a lot of different ways. And when you've got a bunch of people doing what you tell them to do because they're trying to protect their career, or they want a promotion, or they want to make sure that, they make you happy so that they can get the next best assignment, that is also a form of corruption. It's not the same thing as, I'm going to give you $5,000 to vote for me. It's not the same thing as, do this or else I'm going to kill your family. It's not to that level. But you've still got everybody at CIA knows when you serve at CIA, you are taught to understand that you serve at the behest of the president. That's what we all tell ourselves. If you make the president unhappy, he has the right, he or someone else, it doesn't even have to be the president. Your boss can fire you because all they have to do is tell their boss, this person isn't doing what the president asked. This person isn't in line with the priorities of CIA, right? So it's a very difficult career to have, because the president changes every 4 or 8 years. Sometimes the president's liberal, sometimes the president's conservative, sometimes the president trusts CIA, sometimes the president doesn't trust CIA. I mean, it's an extremely hard career. One of the reasons that you always hear me say, I support CIA, I support the men and women still serving and working at CIA, is because the movies make everyone think they want to work there. Everybody, when you watch a movie, everybody's like, I want to be a spy. But let me tell you firsthand, actually working there is one of the hardest things you will ever do in your life. Not because of the job, but because of all of the complications that go into doing the job, right? You have to make people happy. You've got people positioning and lying to you about what they believe in. And everybody's trying to get the next best assignment. Everybody's trying to get the next best mission. And the president's always changing. The director of CIA changes along with the president. Like, oh my gosh, could you imagine working in a company where the leadership changes? Like half the leadership changes every 2 to 4 years. It's not the kind of place where you're going to have a long and successful, fulfilling career. It's the kind of place where you're going to have a very exciting 6 months in Morocco, and then you're going to kind of be annoyed for the rest of your career.
Are there missions in Morocco? What is like Morocco? Does Morocco have a secret intelligence agency? Is like Morocco...
Everybody has
So Morocco.
Everybody has a secret intelligence agency.
So you have been in Morocco? Because I'm like from Morocco, but I've never even with the BND. You surprised me, but now because you said Morocco, I thought like, what kind of role do they even play? Like, do they have a intelligence agency and stuff?
So I don't know the name of the Moroccan intelligence service off the top of my head, but for sure they have one. And Morocco is Casablanca is a very important place when it comes to the straits between Africa, North Africa, and Europe. And then it's compared to the rest of Africa, Morocco is pretty civilized, right? It's a fairly stable country. So when you think about protecting Europe from Africa, you've got Tunisia, you've got Morocco, you've got Egypt. You have to rely on those partners, right? And of course, all of the Moroccan government wants to stay in power. They don't want their people to be attacked by terrorists. They don't want, that's the reason that most countries have a secret intelligence service, is to protect their own people from outside threats.
Wow. Because
that doesn't mean they have a lot of money, but that means that they're there.
They have those spies with like the newspaper and those 2 dots like circled out, and they look into the White House and they're just waiting for the president to slip up. Because I'm thinking,
they use smoke signals.
Yeah.
Smoke signals instead of walkie-talkies. Yeah.
They just yell into the White House, give me some secret. Because I'm imagining like just because of Trump, it's so fascinating to think of, because now I never see the US president the same. Because I know I'm so glad that all of your missions went out well and you came out of it to tell those fascinating stories. But then to think that a guy like you, who has all those skills, has to listen to Trump or whoever, is scary as hell. Like, you have all those competent avengers of intelligence, and there's a popular contest. And then this dude, whoever is in there, you have to listen to him. If not, you get fired. I have goosebumps right now.
So what's crazy, man, is since 2016, since Trump took office in 2016, it took about a year after he took office, so 2017, CIA has been struggling to keep good talent in place. It's something called attrition. When people quit, or when people leave their job, that's called attrition. And CIA has had record-breaking attrition since about 2015. My wife is also former CIA. She's also an ex-covert intelligence officer like me. We both left in 2014, right as it was starting, because we're a different generation. I mean, we're like you, man. We want to do what we want to do. We want to have a fulfilled life. We want to build a family, build a career. We want to travel the world. We don't want to do the same thing that other people tell us to do for the rest of our life. That's not our generation. when you work at CIA, it's the exact, I mean, that is the dead center of do what other people tell you to do, whether you like it or not. So career-wise, we knew it wasn't going to be a good fit. We wanted to grow a family. We wanted to travel the world. Like we wanted to have different experiences. So when we left in 2014, what we didn't know is that we were on the front end of a huge attrition curve. So when we left, CIA was losing about one officer a month. So one officer a month comes out to about 12 officers a year. So 12 undercover officers per year leaving. By the time that the Afghanistan debacle happened just a few months ago, when we left Afghanistan, CIA started losing one officer a day. Hundreds of officers a year quitting because they didn't want to work there anymore, right? During those Trump years was all of the lead up, all of the ramping up, the increasing in attrition as people were career analysts, career tech officers, career disguise people, career officers serving overseas. They realized like the president wasn't even listening to them. The president wasn't funding their operations. The president didn't care. So those people left. They gave up their careers after 3 years or 13 years or 23 years. Because what's the point? What's the point in serving a government that doesn't have a place for you? Or if you create the best analysis in the world, your analysis sits on a shelf and never gets read because of politics. And that just makes people want to leave. And now it's especially funny if you watch CIA now, because now CIA's recruitment drive, they're trying to recruit back all the people they lost, but they're trying to do it in a very liberal world. So like every time you see a CIA ad, it's like, it's got to have a rainbow flag. It's got to have somebody in a wheelchair. It's got to have like, it cannot have a white person anywhere in the picture. It's hilarious because you realize they lost all these people and now they're not even trying to find the best. They're trying to fit this agenda that's been directed by the administration. It's just incredible.
Oh my God. So if you have Bustamante land, right? And you want to cook up your intelligence. So now we saw all the flaws and all this stuff. So how would you mix your perfect intelligence agency to make Bustamante land safe?
So I've got to start with Mossad. Mossad is like the salt, right? So, or even better, Mossad is like what makes it spicy. So we're going to take the viciousness and we're going to take the fearlessness of Mossad right there. That's our spice. That's our pimento, our spicy pepper, right? And we're going to drop that in there. We're going to take CIA's range of capabilities. The fact that they can do everything from human collection to technical collection, and it's all under one roof. I'm going to bring that in. That's going to be like the flour in the dough, right? So the spice is there when you need it, but the flour is what makes up the bulk of stuff, right? I want to take the DGSE and I want to take the funding from DGSE.
Which country is that? Which country is DGSE?
France puts a ton of money into their intelligence service because what nobody realizes is that France is out there stealing all the best economic and industrial secrets of the world. France is, they're fantastic at corporate espionage, industrial espionage, and economic espionage. That's pretty much all they focus on. And they're
rewind
excellent.
That. Sorry, say again. If you say, I don't know if it's the impact of all the movies and propaganda, if I hear espionage, I automatically think of
CIA and Russia.
And China. I always think of China, like corporate, but now you said France. I'm totally flabbergasted right now. So France is like feared in the United States for them to steal corporate secrets.
Not just in the United States, everywhere. I guarantee your German industrial leaders all know that they can't trust the French.
So how did this? How did this start?
It's because of what. So there's two different MOs. MO stands for modus operandi. MO, when you hear it in a movie, modus operandi. It's your style of how you do something, right? So there's two main styles for espionage. There's the Russian style, and then there's the Chinese style. Those are the two big styles. Russian style, and this is what people don't realize, Russian style means that you're so good at what you do that you never get caught. Russia never, ever gets caught. Russia got caught in 2016 with President Trump. And even after getting caught, they have been so good with their own information campaign that people still wonder if it's really true.
Get caught in what? In the election stuff? Is that
Yeah, they got caught doing information campaigns. They got caught with their covert influence campaigns. But even still, like, people still doubt whether or not it was true. People still wonder, was it really true? That's how good the Russians are. Because Russians are so good at digital hacking that they'll steal something from you and you won't even know it was stolen.
Because that's the
Russians
thing.
are so.
Because just one thing for me to understand, the election campaign was so the thing was that they allegedly helped Trump to beat Hillary, right?
Right. They allegedly created a campaign through social media that made the American people choose Trump over Clinton.
Exactly.
Correct.
So, and then the media goes up to Trump to say, do something about Russia. Trump has to be thankful to Russia that they get him in office, right? Or am I completely confused?
Trump doesn't want to even consider the fact that somebody helped him. Trump wants to think, okay, I became president because I'm awesome. I didn't become president because Russia did something. I became president because the American people want me.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. It's his ego. So he doesn't even care about, oh my God, somebody interfered. It's like, no, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, I did it by myself, no help needed. Perfect.
America, you love me. Exactly.
So Russians are like, it seems like Russians are the perfect spies. Don't get caught, never get caught. And what is the Chinese style?
Chinese style is we're going to go in and we're going to break something, and then we're going to leave a little card that says China was here. Right? That's how they do it. So China goes in and, like, in 2017, they stole a bunch of personnel records from the US military, and they stole it right out of the personnel servers of the US military, and they didn't even clean up. Like, it was just sloppy. They used code written in Chinese. So people were like, the Chinese did this. And then the whole world in 2017 or 15, whenever it happened, it was very, very public, where the Chinese hacked the US military grid. And then they said, look, we've got proof. And then the Chinese were just like, wasn't us. We didn't do it. They're like, we can prove that you did it. And the Chinese were still like, wasn't us. That must have been somebody else who just used Chinese to do it. It's like, so that the Chinese want to slap you in the face. Okay. The Russians don't want you to even know that they're there, right? If you consider like burglary, Russians are like cat burglars. They break in at night when you're out on a date, they steal 2 or 3 very valuable things, and then they leave without a trace. And you don't even realize you've been robbed until like 6 months later. The Chinese are like the gangsters down the streets. They break the window on the front door. They come in, they leave the door open. They pilfer everything from your shoes to your digital TV, and then they walk out the front door. And then when you come home, you're like, I got robbed and everything's stolen and everything's broken. And why did they take my cat? That doesn't even make sense. That's how the Chinese work.
Okay. So
those are the two big modus operandi that every other country follows.
So American is basically Russian, right? American style
Correct.
Is Russian style, and all the others, Iran, for example, is Chinese style. Because I remember there was a casino who somehow, I think it was George Soros saying something about Iran, and then they hacked him, and then it did a whole different Iran campaign. Yep. So they're like Chinese style. And
correct.
The other one is, and the Russian style is like, because I saw even, that's fascinating about Putin, because he does interviews to everything, and he answers kind of like, with full respect, kind of like you. He always answers so perfectly and visually. And then I thought, of course, he also had spy training. So if he answers like Megyn Kelly was like, we have hackers, we have this, we have Russian, we proved. And he's like, so what? Are there government agencies? They could be anywhere. It could be your daughter pretending to be Russian in Moscow, and you sit there. Putin has right. Yes, Putin is right. So that is fascinating. So even you have all the evidence, you can still not pinpoint it to anybody. But the same is like for the US. Like for the US, you would never hear them. That's the only time I heard about US hacking, because I know you have a very strong opinion on this, is like with, I think 2 times. First, it was with Theresa Gunn. Do you know her? Theresa Gunn? Or Catherine?
I've heard the
Gunn?
name.
Yeah, she was like, she leaked, she worked for the British CIA. I don't know what the name is, like British CIA. And then she somehow wrote transcripts. It was right when the US wanted to go to war with Iraq. But they didn't have the UN majority. They did not find any weapons of mass stuff. And then there were different, like the UN Security Council is like five, how is it called? The 5 members who are always there.
5, permanent members.
Permanent members, and there were non-permanent members, also 5. And they were like African countries. And then she somehow saw in the transcripts that she got the order to spy on those presidents of the non-permanent members in order to find something so they can press them to say yes for the Iraq invasion. When she saw that, she leaked it, kind of like Snowden style, but I don't know. I think she published it, something like this. And then they wanted to punish her with the Espionage Act. How is it called? Like the Espionage Act.
The Espionage Act.
The Espionage Act, where you basically can't get out. You betrayed, treason, life in jail, forever. And then she somehow found a loophole. She was almost like forever in jail, and then her lawyer did the defense that what she did was right if she was about to prevent something illegal. So then they went to the defense that the whole Iraq war was illegal, and then they quit it. And then she got acquitted because then they dropped the charges because they thought we cannot win this. And this kind of, and then now she can walk around freely. There was, I think, the only spy in Western government who leaked secrets, who actually got charged with the Espionage Act, and then she got off the hook because the Iraq war was illegal. And then they dropped the charges. Like a fascinating movie, definitely have to watch it. I think it's called The Price of Truth. That was the first time I heard about spying, and the second time was with Snowden and WikiLeaks and all that stuff. But with Snowden, and I saw the Oliver Stone movie, that's all I saw.
So think about that for a second, right? Like, I appreciate the stories, right? And Snowden and whatever, and movies and everything else.
Yeah.
But you said you've only heard about CIA hacking twice.
Yes.
But do you think that CIA has only hacked twice?
No.
So that's the example I'm trying to say. Now, when you stop to consider the fact that there are professional hackers whose job it is to basically hack every single day, and there's teams of people like this. I mean, the US military has something called Cyber Command. Their job is all cyber warfare. So not only does it happen frequently, but it happens frequently and nobody even knows it's happening. That's what makes really professional intelligence work happen. Wow. That's why we call it clandestine. Clandestine is a fancy word for secret. Clandestine operations, secret operations, are the most effective when they are kept secret.
Tell that to the Chinese.
Russia is so good at secret operations, they can assassinate people with poison pills in foreign countries and nobody even knows it's happening. Like, they're so good at secret operations. That's their MO. MI6, that's who you're talking about in the UK. The British CIA is MI6. They're excellent at keeping clandestine operations. CIA, clandestine operations. This whole conversation started, we were talking about the French. The French They absolutely understand the importance of keeping things secret. I'm sure that I irritate people every time I talk about the French, because they're like, don't tell us, don't tell anybody about us. What are you doing? Right? We're just French. We just drink coffee and we eat crumpets and we're very peaceful people. No, you're a bunch of sons of bitches.
Because also, like, I think the whole cyber warfare started actually with the Stuxnet virus, right? There was like the genie out of the bottle moment.
Correct. It had been in place long before that, but Stuxnet went so public. Even though it was successful, it became so public that now genie was out of the bottle, just like you said.
Unbelievable, because then I know because just for the people who don't know Stuxnet, it was basically a virus in a Iranian nuclear power plant that made the power plant destroy itself. That was basically the virus, right? And then they somehow detected it, and that started the whole new arms race, but this time in cyberspace. It was kind of like the Hiroshima bomb for nuclear weapons, but this time it was for cyberspace.
Right. And then one thing further with Stuxnet, the reason Stuxnet is considered so effective is because it was created to do one thing. It was created to make Iranian centrifuges run like 10% too hot, so they would destroy themselves. But then the Stuxnet virus got released into the open internet. And now they say almost every digital device in the world, if it's a digital device connected to the internet, it's been infected with Stuxnet.
Wow.
But Stuxnet doesn't work on any device except that specific model of Iranian centrifuge. So where most viruses will destroy almost anything they touch, that specific virus was so well built, it only did the one thing it was supposed to do. And even though now it's proliferated everywhere, it doesn't damage anybody's phone or anybody's pacemaker or anybody's smartwatch.
Fascinating, because that was also the thing, like Stuxnet was found in Japanese mainframes everywhere, and I saw it like everywhere. But now everything makes sense, man. When you said we are like a family that gossips like all the intelligence agencies, but we keep an eye on them in case they may turn on a tink of dime. Let's say Japan and Russia, they have a conflict right now with those 4 islands, like in all up there, that would solve all the Japanese energy problems. If they make a pact with energy, Japan could not be an ally anymore. And that's why you have to keep an eye on everybody, because like the world is so fragile and so everybody can get turned on so quickly that it is fascinating. You trust until you don't trust anymore, basically. And this could
exactly right
be every day.
We call it trust but verify. That's the actual terminology that we use. Trust but verify. I trust you, but I'm still going to keep an eye on you to verify that you're trustworthy, every day, every hour, every week, whatever it might be. But trust but verify.
In Germany, we say Vertrauen ist gut, Kontrolle ist besser. We say basically control is, trust is good, but we still control. Like, we still have you. So is there like, because the thing that blew my mind with the Mossad was like, do you know, I think he may be the GOAT of spy. I don't know if they have a Michael Jordan of spying, but like the greatest goal a spy could have would be to become the president of a different nation, right? If you could have a Chinese American spy starting in a bar, and now he is like the successor of Xi Jinping, that would be like the ultimate mic drop career achievement for a spy, right? Then you would won, right? So the thing,
basically.
And there was one spy that got very close to it from the Mossad. I think his name is Eli Cohen. Eli Cohen.
Yeah,
do you know him?
I know the movie. I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. And he got to the foreign minister. He was like a spy in Syria, helped regime change, I think is the name. You have like a president before, you change the regime, and then he got to foreign minister. So after seeing that movie, I kind of feel suspicious with every politician who gets in office, because I think maybe he was sponsored 10 years ago to do something in the interest of a different government?
You should feel suspicious. That is healthy suspicion.
Really?
I mean, that is the ultimate goal every spy agency in the world is working for. Let's find the 24-year-old intern. Let's make them a spy now so that 25 years from now, they are in charge of the military. They're the president of a country. They're whatever it might be, right? Now, I will also say that when it comes to mic drops, right, you've got Eli Cohen who made it into the senior echelons of Syria. But Syria is not that big a player on the world stage, right? Like, now when you think about more like Putin is a former intelligence officer who's also an authoritarian leader of an entire country, of a first world country. Like that's massive. That's crazy. That's why, like you say, he's able to individually shape entire people's opinions because he understands operations on his own.
Amazing.
Like that to me that's scary. And in the United States, like how far removed, how long before General Petraeus may very well run for president at some point. If that happens, you have America's chief general in the Middle East and a former director of CIA who is now also the president, right? The last time we saw something like that was with George Bush Sr. George Bush Sr., I'm pretty sure, was also a CIA officer or engaged with CIA, and he became the president, right? Like that's when that kind of thing happens. That's the ultimate mic drop, because now you have a massively powerful country whose executive, who has all that executive power, also familiar with espionage operations, and also in control of the entire intelligence apparatus. That's an incredible amount of power.
That is and he doesn't have to. I mean, are you in favor of the US president changing every 4 years? Are you like, because it's such a complicated and difficult job. I mean, Putin gets better every year. Xi Jinping gets better every year. And they also like age backwards. Look at Putin's speech in the Munich Security Conference. So when he, like, I want to totally go on Putin. Like, when he started, like, for me, I think, like, since we have the healthy suspicion that politicians could be spies, like what Gorbachev did. I mean, the only explanation for Gorbachev doing what he did, was basically being a CIA spy. Like, Gorbachev, sometimes I think how he destroyed like all the power in such a quick of a time by adapting liberal values, which destroy the whole apparatus in such a quick time, and then getting Yeltsin in, who's like a drunk, babbling, doesn't know where he is guy. It seems like Gorbachev was like the perfect spy who got recruited years ago in the US, going in there and dissolving the Soviet Union, saying stuff like, yes, we will relinquish all the power. We don't need East Germany. No fun. Everybody can choose by himself. All this stuff sounds like, because you said the security paradox, right?
Dilemma.
And the security dilemma. And he basically acquitted all of that stuff, dissolved his whole nation, relinquished all the power without a fight. It seems like the only explanation I have is like Gorbachev must have been a CIA spy. It's like, or is there like a reason why he did that? Because usually you fight till the end, but to give up all of that and then not even having a contract with NATO East expansion. He was like, but you promise us, right? You don't give us East expansion. Yeah, we promise you, Gorbachev. Just relax. And then not even having like a contract or something seems like the perfect CIA coup.
So do you know how famous musicians become famous?
No idea.
So a famous musician always starts as just a broke musician, right? U2, before they became famous, they were just a band that played at a bar, right? The Beatles, before they were famous, they were just a band that played at a bar. Now what happens is a production company or a producing agent finds them and says to themselves, these people have talent. All they need is an audience. And I have the kind of money that can buy an audience. But the producer doesn't come in and change the music. The producer doesn't come in and teach them how to sing or teach them how to play the guitar, right? The agent just comes in and says, you do what you do, and I'm going to bring people to you, and we're going to make a bunch of money. That same strategy is an excellent strategy in espionage. You find people who are very charismatic. You find people who really believe in their own crazy ideas, right? Like whether you're talking about Gorbachev or whether you're talking about the World Economic Forum with Carl Schwab right now, people who have these crazy ideas, you find them and all you have to do is build an audience because there are other people who will believe the same thing. You just got to bring them those people. So we call it, the Russian term for this was useful idiot. That's something that's what the Russians call them, right? But essentially, these are people who, on their own, believe in something that you can leverage for your own benefit. You can use it for yourself, even if you don't believe it. You can use it. All you got to do is help them succeed. So oftentimes, that's the most effective strategy. You just take a crazy person and you start funding them. You take a crazy person and you start giving them an audience. You come in and you produce them, if you will, right? Increase their video quality, put optimization on their website, right? Whatever it might be, you make them work for you. You're not actually telling them what to say. You're letting them say whatever crazy shit they're going to say. You're just making sure more people hear it, right? Oftentimes, that's the best method to run any kind of covert influence operation because you're not the one influencing anybody. You just found the right influencer and now you're pumping them full of money to make sure that they get heard everywhere.
Wow, amazing. You saw this guy.
But that's how musicians are made too, man. That's why there are so many talented musicians that don't get discovered. It's just that a producer happens to find one that does. They pump a bunch of money into them and they let them do their thing. And then they make a bunch of money off it.
Wow. See, because when I thought like after Second World War, like fighting Hitler and all that stuff, when that was over, you started basically the Cold War. When it was over, you had like this big caucus of Russia, which is like, I mean, Russia right now is the biggest country in the world, and they are getting stronger by the year because all this unusable land in Siberia and stuff, through climate change, they are like the biggest winners of climate change. They will get more and more resources. All this Arctic sea route we have right now, which they can travel all the ships and all the cargo through their exclusive economic zones, and they get like there will be like in 30 years, if all the ice is gone, they can be like the future superpower. And when they had the chance, like after the fall of the Soviet Union, with Yeltsin in there, drunk, like this was like the perfect operation, like to take Russia all in. Like all the nukes were in Ukraine. Like it was like the perfect moment to dissolve this whole conflict forever. And then this was like the moment where I thought, why didn't they do it immediately? Because this was like the once in a lifetime chance. And then when Putin got into office in the beginning, now I'm very fascinated about your opinion, but he was all out of let's be friends, please. He went into the German Bundestag. I mean, he speaks German. He held a speech in German. He said the Cold War is over. We have to work together. He went to Bush and said, please don't retreat from the nuclear deal. Please, let's make sure everybody stays safe. Don't do NATO East expansion. And he even sent an application to join NATO. Like Russia wanted to join NATO. And then he was the only country ever after the Soviet Union who got like neglected. And I wanted to fascinatingly listen to your opinion. Like, is it good for the United States to always have like an opponent? And is it why didn't they say like, or was Putin full of shit? Because I'm just thinking about looking through all the history and seeing his mind change. Like in the beginning, he was, come on, let's hug, let's work together. And then after uppercut after uppercut, like diplomatic uppercuts that were given to him. And then he started to retreat and then work closer with Germany. And then they started those Nord Stream pipelines. And then the US was like, and then I thought about NATO basically was founded to keep the Germans down and the Russians out. And with that, with those two countries working closer together, and Germany with those two pipelines where US tried everything, like from Trump to Obama, trying to stop those Nord Stream pipelines. And the fascinating sentence you said on Lex's podcast, sometimes the president slips up his real agenda. It was fascinating when you said that, goosebumps again, because I thought about the moment where they had this press conference, the German chancellor and the US President Joe Biden. That's great that he's so old and forgets stuff. He always forgets the real agenda. He just says it. And then they say, what are going to be the consequences of Russia invading Ukraine? And then the German chancellor saying, I don't want to answer. And then Joe Biden saying, we're going to close Nord Stream 2. I promise you that. And then he says it, and then he does it, and all those stuff that trickles down, it's like fascinating to me, like to think of the influence you're just telling me that all those people have above each other. And if they have something that they don't like, they will make sure that it's going to be done. And I just wanted to hear your opinion about what does Germany mean for the US, and how important is the Europe-Russia conflict to the US?
The Europe-Russia conflict is important to the United States in terms of information gathering. That's and on an ideological base, right? We want the world to believe that democracy is the best thing in the world for everybody, right? That's the United States is the biggest exporter of democracy, even though we have proven a few times over that countries don't really like democracy. Yeah. Some countries they're not going to be a democratic country. So NATO and the conflict that NATO has is a very ideological conflict, because if we can support NATO and we can drive NATO to combat authoritarianism in Europe, then that's a big win for democracy. But the truth is that America doesn't lose anything in the conflict between Europe and Russia. We're not dependent on Russian energy. We're not dependent on Russian exports. Europe, who is dependent on Russian exports, when Europe doesn't buy from Russia, guess who they buy from? The United States.
LNG, baby.
So now the United States is economically benefiting by encouraging a conflict between NATO and Russia, right? So it's what the big change after the fall of the Soviet Union, the real big change was that the world became globalized, meaning the economy became globalized. You could grow wheat in the United States, ship it you could grow wool in the United States, ship it to India. India can actually process it into fabric and dye the color and then send it back to the United States, and the United States can sell it at a premium price, right? So now there were ways to make more money by working together as an entire planet, by globalizing the planet. The United States could say, we're against slavery, and just send, buy their processor chips from China, where they used slavery to make children build these semiconductor chips and then send it to the United States. So there were lots of benefits to a globalized economy. That's the big change that came out of the fall of the Soviet Union. Before that, everybody was kind of dependent on themselves and maybe a small trading bloc, right? Like the BRIC. Brazil, Russia, India, and China they all traded together, right? It was an economic bloc. But when the entire world became a globalized economy, now all of a sudden there were opportunities to make more money. More money means more taxes. More money means bigger, newer weapons, more technology, right? It became very obvious very quickly that more economic power was the same thing as saying more military power, more intelligence power, more power of all types if you had more money, more monetary power. That's when the United States took off in that 1989, 1990s era. That's when America really took off, taking advantage of this globalized economy. The change that you saw in Putin between when he first took office in the 90s or whatever and now is that he has also started to recognize how to play the global economics game. The resource that he controls is power, energy, and the areas that he controls it is east and west of Russia. East meaning serving China, and west serving Europe. So people like to say that Russia's waging an economic game, like he's weaponizing energy. He's doing no different than when the United States closes off banks or puts economic sanctions on Russia. They're both doing the same thing. They're controlling whatever resource they can control and using it as a tool of war, right? So when we look at power brokers in the world right now, we have to look at it through a lens of economics. What does that mean for Germany? Economically, Germany doesn't have a whole lot to gain from the United States. Germany is a major player in Europe, but they're not so much of a major player in the United States. And Germany is heavily dependent on Russian energy. So Germany's stuck in this place where they're a leader in Europe, they're a leader in NATO, and by being part of the whole NATO team, they're doing what the United States is encouraging NATO to do, but it's not benefiting Germany. Germany is in a very, very hard spot right now, where they have to play nice with Russia. They don't have to play nice with NATO, but they want to play nice with NATO because they also know that the rest of the world still doesn't really trust Germany because, oh yeah, there's been 2 world wars and most of the world blames Germany for those, right? So Germany's in a rough spot, dude. It doesn't have the easy pass like Poland or Lithuania or Romania, right? Those countries, nobody talks about them. It's what is Germany going to do? And how long is Germany going to put itself in a pinch with inflation? The euro is hyperinflated right now. The euro has lost so much value against the US dollar. And guess what? Every US export you guys buy, you buy it in US dollars. So it's the United States has just set itself up so that it can make tons of money from Europe. It can put Ukraine in debt, and it can watch as Russia does whatever Russia can do to win a war. Like the United States is sitting pretty in a lot of ways, even though when you read our newspaper, like we're just trying to do the right thing and lead the world into the next phase of democracy, right? It's like, no, we're just trying to make a shit ton of money by profiteering on a war we don't have to fight.
What did you mean by putting Ukraine in debt?
So you know how the United States keeps sending weapons and money and support to the Ukrainians?
It's yes. They say it's because to fight democracy and stuff, right?
Right. We do that through the tool that we do that through is called the Lend-Lease Act. That's
from
the law
the Second World
War?
War? From the Second World War still?
Right.
No way. Right. It's the same still?
So the same act, we reapplied it. We updated it and reapplied it to Ukraine. So now Ukraine gets all this stuff from the United States, but it's only lended or leased. It's never like, we're not giving it to you, we're lending it to you. But you know what happens when you crash a Switchblade drone into a tank? Exactly. Now you have to pay for that Switchblade. Exactly.
Wow. That's why the US doesn't care that Russia has I can never say that word. Russia has
superiority.
Air superiority. And after watching tons of World War II documentaries, I know that if you control the sky, you can control all the resources. So it doesn't matter.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter if you have those nice new weapons from the States. If you control the sky and they bring it in by ship, they cannot do it anymore. So they bring it through some rail stations. So you can send up your own drone or some jet blowing it off. Now I know why the US doesn't care. Like the US doesn't care if they get blown off because they are getting in debt. So after the war is over, I don't know. I'm very curious about your prediction. It's kind of going to be like East and West Germany. So you have the East going to Russia and the West is going to be so indebted to the US. So they are kind of like they're going to be a landlocked state if they are continuing securing the South. and then it's going to be like a West-East Germany situation? Or what is your prediction? I think on Lex's podcast you said maybe until fall, but I'm very curious about right now.
Yeah, so I'm anticipating that there's going to be some kind of peace deal that happens in the fall. There's NATO, Germany, and Poland do not want this conflict to continue into the winter. They want to make sure that they can get access to Russian energy by the winter time. Because in the face of inflation and freezing temperatures, where 50% of your energy flow comes from Russia, you need to have access to that primary source. You just can't afford to buy it from the United States. Like the economies and the political infrastructure in Germany specifically, the pressure would become so significant that, you know, politicians would get fired. There'd be a complete change in administration. Like look at the outrage over the nuclear power plants right now in Germany. Because the only reason that those are even on the table is because you don't have energy coming in from Russia anymore. Your entire 20-year development plan has been put on hold because of a war that isn't your war. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless Ukraine was doing something significant for Germany, which it wasn't, because Ukrainian wheat, Ukrainian exports, Ukrainian materials, they go south, they go to Asia, and they go to Africa. They don't go to Germany. So Germany is in this truly terrible position where your inflation is out of control and your decisions are being made by an American leader who's got politics on his brain and economics on his brain. And you all are stuck where you can't necessarily say you disagree. Like France, Macron in France has come out several times and been like, this is not a good idea. This is not really a good fight for NATO. We should think this through. But Germany doesn't get a chance to do that. Germany has to kind of play nice with NATO until they choose not to, even though you're the ones getting just punched in the face.
And not punched in the face, nuts. In the face and nuts. But the thing is that is fascinating to me, because I know like if we go through all the history of regime, of how you call it, regime change, right? If you have, let's see, Guatemala. There was do you know the president Arnenz? What is his name? It was in Guatemala, United Fruits Company. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know who you're talking about. Yeah. I don't remember, but I know the mission you're talking about.
Exactly. Yep. It was like Guatemala. There was like banana were becoming like very popular all over the world. It was kind of like the 70s avocado, right? It was like banana was the avocado before avocado, right? And then it was the United Fruits Companies. Today it's called Chiquita, and they controlled all of the banana places in Guatemala. And then they did huge profits, and they just gave all the farmers a few pennies. And then Arbenz, I think it was a new president called Arbenz, and then it was in the midst of the Cold War. He said, man, US does all those profits with our bananas, but we are still poor. Let's use communism to our advantage, and let's take the land off them. And then the United Fruits Company, through some lobbyists, whatever, now it makes everything makes sense. So basically a banana guy went up to Nixon and said, hey, you like bananas? I give you so much bananas for your whole families through the rest of your life. Just use your executive branch called the CIA to do a co-op.
To take out the president.
Exactly. I mean, now I even get how it works. They look at all their spies. So Nixon says, let me see what I can do. I mean, it's in America's best interest because American companies make a lot of profits. We get taxes. And then we can secure the workplace here. Let me see which spies I can use. I use the paramilitaries. So it's even like a video game. Do I use like it's like characters? Do I use like the covert spy? Do I use like Andrew Bustamante? No, it takes too long. We need it now. So we take the paramilitary, we search a conflict in Guatemala, and then we already see a raging conflict. The band analogy, we blow up the conflict producer, we make it a fancy conflict, and then we put our paramilitary guys in. Arbenz leaves the country, we do regime change, and then he revokes the political, he revokes all the policies, and then USA secured its own interests. That's how it basically
Yep.
works, right?
Dude, like my job here is done, dude. Your education, your education is complete, Salem.
But no, it's let me
When
call
you're
right
ready,
now.
when you're ready to start your own intelligence organization, just let me know,
Hey,
and I'll come be your chief of staff.
Bustamante land. We do it with Bustamante land. We have the spice of Mossad, and then we take the French, and then we take the CIA, and then. But how would you like? I have like Germany right now, so I'm the U.S. I'm only protecting my American interests, right? That's what
American primacy.
American primacy. Yes, I'm picturing the 7'6" dude. We are like the best. So we have this spot we look at. So we have like all the potential new world powers who have those ambitions. Obviously China, obviously Russia, but Russia not by itself, because Russia has the huge resources, but they lack the intelligence and the efficiency, and they're sadly, it's a corrupt country. So you have different problems all over, and they have like a low population. Like they have 120 millions through such big spheres, but they're like a future player. So if Russia by itself, no, but Russia with China, possibly, because if they have the energy, China has the workforce. With the new Arctic route, they even don't go around the choke points that are controlled by the US Navy anymore, because the Chinese are shitting their pants every day because of the Strait of Malaga. It's like a little choke point where all the energy flows, and there's the US Navy blockade, and then we kind of scarily have a Pearl Harbor situation, because what kind of like was the same thing. We do an oil embargo, and then the Japan uses the first attack, and then that's kind of what I'm shitting my pants about. And then we have this Taiwan situation, if they reunificate. But then a different one is like, if you don't think Russia, China, is Russia, Germany. It's like, because Germany has all the industry, all the leading engineering, but they lack the energy. And with those two Nord Stream pipelines, they kind of would make a perfect fusion monster that could take primacy.
So you got to remember that the security dilemma is always at play.
Yes.
Always. Yes. So any partnership, whether it's Russia, Germany, or Russia, China, or Japan, Russia, whatever, is bound to fail. It's bound to fall apart because of the security dilemma. So what you have is you have those countries that intend to be primacy, like the number one country. China wants to be the world's economic power. The United States wants to be the world's economic power. Russia wants to be the world's economic power. But none of them want to do it by being partnered with somebody else. If they have to be partnered temporarily, that's okay. But as soon as they're partnered temporarily, there's going to be infighting, just like Egyptian pharaohs back in the day, right? So even as we watch Russia and China get closer and closer to each other, that also means that there's tons of spying going on between each other. A Russian was just recently imprisoned in Russia for spying on behalf of the Chinese in the hypersonic missile program. Wow. That just happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. A Russian hypersonic missile engineer was tried for treason inside Russia because he was selling secrets to the Chinese. So as they get closer and closer, they're also going to be fighting more and more. That's the security dilemma. Wow. So the thing to watch in Europe is Russia. In Asia, watch China. In the Middle East, watch Iran and Saudi Arabia. Those are the two countries vying for power in the Middle East, right? One is a Shia country, one is a Sunni country. Both have enormous resources, and both are trying to win the Middle East. And if you win the Middle East, you win the crude oil of the entire world, right? So it's not just fighting over dates and coffee down there. They're fighting over, oil and sand also. So that's the people to watch, the countries to watch there. And then in Latin America, you don't have any countries vying for any major influence. In most of Europe, you don't have countries vying for major influence. So it's like there's differences there. But economically, you want to watch the United States, Russia, China, Iran, and Saudi Arabia.
Wow, fascinating because as long as the countries are fine with being second place, then
they're never a threat.
They're never a threat. So you can use
They're always a brown. Yep, they're always a brown guy in Asia.
Yes, brown guy in Asia, not a threat. As soon as you start talking about primacy and the new Silk Road, if you throw those words around, then you get into the radar of threats. So because I'm thinking, because I'm just thinking because it was such a fascinating change. Like in Germany, we only had 3 chancellors. Like for the last, we had the Putin friend. I think his name is Gerhard Schröder, right? He was like the first chancellor of Germany. He started the whole Nord Stream stuff. And then he left office and now is best buddies with Putin to this day. He's chilling in Moscow, going to the sauna with him. They are like real men friends. They chill. And then back then with George Bush, they said to Schröder, hey, don't use Nord Stream, because if you use Nord Stream, which is the economically best option. I mean, as sad as it is, we can switch politicians and intelligence agencies. The stuff that never change are the land borders. Like the resources are where they are. You cannot change them because you have a rainbow flag on your shirt. It doesn't matter. So like strategically, the best option for Europe to get the energy is through Russia. It's like it's just a geopolitics game. LNG ports, you don't have them, and all those ships, you don't have the capacity, and they're way more expensive. So it's like the only option is Russia. So Schröder, the first chancellor in Germany, said that. He started building it, but they could resist the pressure. That's what I'm fascinated by, because George Bush went over there, Obama, no, not Obama, just Bush telling to the Germans, hey, don't do that, but they still did it. And then Merkel came in, who reigned for almost 16 years. It was always also like a dictator lifetime. And then she did the same thing. No, I want to do it. I'm acting for German interests. Those 2 pipelines are going to ensure our energy sustainability. I don't care about the political pressure. And then they started building. It's fascinating. 2013, they started building the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which like completely, it would be an energy lottery jackpot. If those 2 pipelines would start right now, all the energy problems would be resolved. Like the Nord Stream 2, especially because it's like a dual pipeline. It's like a twin pipeline. So it's like a royal flush for all the German industry if this one could be turned on. But then everybody from the States started attacking. Like even Cruz and Pelosi and Trump and everybody. Hey, it's not, it makes me sad, everybody. But Merkel somehow could resist to it. Even when the 2014, the Crimea conflict started, then they even wanted to impose sanctions on Nord Stream 2 immediately. But Merkel did the Minsk agreement, and then they said, conflict solved, no sanctions needed. And then she somehow still saved the project. And then she left office, and then the new guy is in for almost like 3 months, and he completely dismantled the whole economy, like starting every conflict, starting warmongering, raising 100 billion for the military and stuff. It's almost seems to me like, and he is like a chancellor who is always like he never speaks clearly. He's always like, nobody knows exactly.
So keep in mind that Merkel caught Obama spying on Germany.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Unbelievable.
So what you have is you're talking about exactly what we've been talking about the whole podcast long, right? Merkel did not trust the United States. She doesn't care who the president is. What she knows is that the president of the United States does not have Germany's best interest in mind. And then especially when she caught Obama, who was claiming to be like a peer, they were both like liberal leaders, and then she caught them spying on Germany. Again, gossip in the family, right? At that point, she was done. She was like, I knew never to trust these people. Now I can publicly say why we are never going to listen to the United States.
Wow.
Right. But then the new chancellor that came in, who you're dealing with now, he has not had that experience. He may even believe the United States is there to help him in some way, right? He wants more power. Who knows? Who knows? Politicians are always in somebody's pocket. Politicians are just like bands. Somebody made the politician. Some producer somewhere made the politician.
Wow.
So you're never voting. Yeah, you're never voting for the lead singer. You're voting for the producer.
Yes, unbelievable. Because I don't know which podcast you had. You had those like if you wanna blackmail someone, right? You had this fascinating explanation, man. I loved you for this. It was amazing when you said you want to blackmail somebody. There's like the difference between perceived risk and the real risk. So, and the only perceived risk is like you dancing with a puppet of Britney Spears in your backyard with underpants on. It's embarrassing. Perceived risk, oh my God, I'm going to be embarrassed. Real risk, zero. Because you know,
right.
Tomorrow it's going to be something else. And the difference why Epstein was so fascinating, he had real risk blackmail. Like if you have sex with a minor, this is like a charge where you go in jail, so you cannot just wipe it off because then you have some answers to give, right? So what fascinates me about our chancellor right now in Germany, he was like, before he became chancellor, he had like some fraud accusations, like with cum-ex and some Cayman Island stuff, very complicated. Nobody knows it, and it didn't get. Everybody knows it, but nobody's charging it. So what I'm thinking, if they have an army, if Joe Biden has an army of smart Bustamantes, like staying in there and saying, "Hey, this guy has some real risk he has to worry about. Collect it, and if he comes to the States, I will make him close down Nord Stream 2, although it's opposed to the German interest." Is something like this even thinkable?
So what you're getting into now is conspiratorial thinking.
Yes.
Right? Is almost anything is conceivable, right? Almost anything is theoretical, possible, right? Almost anything that you can imagine could happen. But what's the likelihood? What's the resource that would have to go into that? And what is the real risk as a result? Right? Trying to blackmail the chancellor of Germany, that's got its own real risks associated with it, right? I mean, Obama wasn't even trying to blackmail Merkel. He was just trying to do some classic spying. And the fallout was immense. So could you imagine slippery Joe Biden trying to like hold naked pictures up of the German, like that's going to go very, very badly. That's going to go like, here's your secret Cayman bank account number, sir. And then his dentures fall out. It's going to look terrible. So that's not the best way to move forward. Instead, it's more like, just like we were talking about with the example of a rock band. It's better to just say, here's a guy who's a little bit crazy, who doesn't understand what's in Germany's best interests. Let's go ahead and offer him our support. Let's tell him America is with you. Let's tell his voting base. This man is the future of globalized economy, right? Let's back him up that way. Let's get on podiums and say good things until we accidentally say the wrong thing and our PR person has to, correct us. But yeah, that's the more strategic direction to take that, because essentially we have the useful idiot situation that we were talking about with Russia.
Yes. So he basically,
this person honestly believes they're doing the right thing, so let's just give them an audience.
Wow. So you check out the useful idiots and then you just sponsor them and that's it. So you're just letting the useful idiot doing his thing, and then you can sit back, relax, and watching all the stuff like unfold and let the party begin, and then you can just chill without even wasting a CIA officer.
Right. You eat your popcorn, you drink your beer, and you watch the show.
Unbelievable. That is unbelievable. Amazing stuff, man. I cannot appreciate it enough because what do you think about Oliver Stone and his movies? Do you like his movies, or do you think they're too much conspiracy? Because because he's like roasting the CIA all throughout, like even blaming the CIA with social media branches, like the National Endowment Agency, if I remember correctly, starting this whole Ukraine thing and blaming all on the CIA. Do you think that's just conspiracy, or is there anything to it?
Yeah. So, and I just want to be sensitive because I'm running out of time a little bit as well, Salem. So if we can wrap up soon, that would be very helpful for me. But when you talk about Oliver Stone, what I like, there's definitely a benefit to documenting our history through movies. And I think what he does an excellent job of doing is he's capturing public opinion about how we trust politics and how we trust the CIA. Most of the public sees the United States intelligence infrastructure as like shady and corrupt and villainous. There's conspiracy everywhere. So all he's really doing is he's just reflecting back on us what we already think as a population. And there's tons of value there. If you look back at movies made in the 1950s, right? All those is a reflection of what society believed about themselves. We believed that people were happy and we would sing and dance in the street and everybody had a perfect dress or a perfect suit on all the time. And then if you remember, like in the early 2000s, everything was military, right? Independence Day and all these blockbuster hits about, fighting against aliens and fighting in army movies and, new technology. That's what we believed at the time. Now we're in this phase where, every other new show that comes out is about a rogue FBI officer, a rogue CIA officer, a rogue paramilitary group. It's all secrets and conspiracy because that's what we all believe. And I've always loved media because media reflects back on us how we see ourselves. I don't know what it's going to look like in 10 years, but this is what it looks like right now.
Wow. Amazing stuff, man. Thank you so much, man. Thanks for taking the time. If people want to, if I say then you, maybe if I forget something, I love your Everyday Spy podcast, man. I started from the beginning. It almost feels like a little educational to be like, because I am also like, sometimes I meet like high net worth customers because I sometimes, cooperate and sell, like, do you know cryo chambers? Yeah, exactly. I sometimes like promote them and sell them, so I meet them. So maybe they also have like big businesses, so keep in mind that any one of those people could listen to it. So where can they find you? And if they want to like increase their security in their own company, where can they find and listen to you? You're absolutely blessed, man. I cannot believe that the CIA allows this. It's unbelievable. Like a former CIA.
They allow it for now. Yeah, it's not going to be long before they shut me down, probably. But we'll try and see. We'll go as long as we can go.
Yeah. So where can they find you and all those net?
Yeah, you can find me. You can find me all the time at my website, everydayspy.com. If you like podcasts, you can find me on my podcast, Everyday Espionage. It's on all the major platforms that are out there. And if you like social media, you'll find me at Everyday Spy on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else. But those would be the places. If you want to find me, go there. And then if anybody's interested in testing their own spy skills right now, I have a free spy quiz that will tell you what your spy superpower is. If you go to everydayspy.com/quiz, in just 12 questions, I'll tell you exactly what kind of spy you would have been had you been recruited. If you go to everydayspy.com/quiz.
Amazing. And if anybody wants to consult you to use your skills and security to protect their business, is this also on the website or somewhere else?
Yeah, it's all on the website, or I would recommend that you send me a direct message through Instagram or through Twitter. or if they're connected to you, Salem, I mean, you and I are going to stay in contact. So anybody can reach out to me through you anytime.
And if you're ever in Germany, you're more than welcome. I show you around. Thank you so much. It was amazing, and have a beautiful day. And the day is just starting in where you are, right?
Yeah, just turning in the afternoon. I appreciate you spending some time with me, man.
Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much. And mwah, have a beautiful day, man.
Take care, sir.
Thanks.